Observer's log. Stardate September 28th, 1987. As you can see by the environment, we are on the bridge this month of the USS Enterprise NCC 1701D.
Right here.
Right
It's TNG.
there. Moving into TNG, I was a
Oh
baby
man.
air mere 2 months old, not even at the point. I'm Jake Clark, my friend Eric Berry over here, Trekkie B47. You were about six at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
I was five. Yeah.
but
Yeah, I was
okay,
five.
so
Yeah.
magical time. We're in the midst of Star Trek 4 is already out in theaters, I believe, at this time, if I have
Hmm.
my dates correct. Moving along in the story to the next adventures, the next crew in this franchise after the success of the movies. They wanted to get back again, moving back to a television product to
Yes.
try and capitalize on what happened. We end up with this new edition, which is again a new four-step in TV. Many shows didn't do a jump like this yet. This is new. Shows didn't do one iteration and then continue the
Hmm.
same tradition in another. But just because you were actually present for these times, sir, what was it like from a consumer and fan perspective leading up to Star Trek: The Next Generation?
Yeah, so I mean, from a consumer, from a fan perspective, I mean, I was literally 5 years old when this came out, and we touched upon this in our first episode. But I have a distinct memory of my dad sitting me down in front of the TV the night that TNG premiered, and we watched Encounter at Farpoint. And as a kid, I was just fascinated by, just the wonders of space and, seeing the ship and all the cool effects. And so for TNG, it started when I was five, and then it ran 7 seasons. So, that would be when I'm 11, 12.
Mhm.
Um, it actually ended before we moved to Illinois because I grew up in Atlanta as a kid. And yeah, so as a kid, I remember a lot of it um, as an ongoing presence
Mm.
growing up because obviously my dad was hugely interested. He started out with the original series, and obviously TNG was a big deal for both of us. So it almost became like family quality time watching.
Hmm.
But the good thing about TNG and how it was airing was it was the first Star Trek series that was syndicated. Well,
It wasn't
original
sold to a
series
network. It
are
was sold in syndication
yeah,
for original premiere. Yeah.
yeah. So it was everywhere. Like the reruns were everywhere. So growing up, I remember the repetition, and even after TNG ended, there were so many ways to keep watching TNG after it aired. Like it was always rerunning on a channel like Sci-Fi Channel, or
Yep.
now it's rerunning on a few different shows and streaming and all that. So um I distinctly remember there were episodes that I had seen multiple times just through the power of syndication, and episodes that maybe I didn't want to see over and over again. And Next Generation, I mean, they're not pulling any punches. It was very cerebral at times. And so as a kid, a lot of this stuff flew by me until I was an adult and started rewatching them. And I think the HD remasters breathed new life into the show, and so I grew up with TNG, but I feel like for me as a fan, it's like a fine wine. It just gets better with age, and an appreciation for me as I'm an adult, and the perspectives of some of these episodes change for me. An episode I thought was probably boring as hell as a kid, as an adult, I'm like deeply fascinated by, and can take the messages from that. And I think that's the beauty of Next Generation, at least for me. How about you?
I think picking up right there real quick, I think that's one of the beauty parts of coming into Trek as a kid
Hmm.
is that yeah, it's there's still newness in checking out some of this older stuff or seeing it again just simply because okay, yeah, I'm older now, have more mature eyes. I'm seeing different things that yes, as a kid went right over my head. And I think it's one of the things also a little bit lacking or just might be because I'm coming into the newer Trek as an adult period, but that's a discussion for another time.
Sure.
Um, yeah, it's foundational. It's childhood for me. Like there are old family video or family movies, where my dad's playing with me on the couch, tickling me as a baby, and it's Star Trek on the background that you can hear in
Yep.
TV. Like that's it's so it's child. Like I said, this TNG premiered 2 months after I was born, so it doesn't really ring for me. But yeah, it's as you spoke to, it was everywhere. This is the beginning of Trek really becoming something which we
Yeah.
won't touch on too much in this episode because we're really
Sure.
going to stick to TNG. We'll probably get to that when we get to that TNG movies era because that's when it's really at a nice hilt. But this
Yeah.
is really Trek becoming mainstream. But then once again, with a start that is like this show shouldn't have survived. There's issues with once
First
again.
season sucks. I mean,
It's
we'll get to it. It sucks.
it sucks, but like it's this weird transition of Gene Roddenberry continuing his vision with some of the older folk from
Sure.
TOS like DC Fontana in the writers' room and that weird transition fight and letting go into what is essentially called the Berman era, the Rick Berman era.
Yep.
And which
For
is
better
really
or worse.
which is ultimately really only forcefully made happen because of Gene Roddenberry's declining health and eventual death
Hmm.
in around in 91. So it's yeah, them first two, they're rough. We'll get to it in a second. But again, this is a show that shouldn't have made it. Chaos on the Bridge. If you haven't checked out that
I was just gonna mention that Chaos on the Bridge. I was looking up because I couldn't quite remember the name, but yeah, Chaos on the Bridge, fantastic documentary if you want to learn what happened when TNG was starting up.
so much drama behind the scenes. Then of course you bring up the issue of like I said, this is the TOS cast in the prime of their movie run. Star Trek
Hmm.
4 is out in theaters. What is Star Trek without James T. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy? Should there be Star Trek without these characters? If it's
Right.
not the original Enterprise or what we've seen on screen so far, is it Star Trek? Either? So you've got a lot of drama with it. There's a lot possibly riding on this. With the scenario going on, and yet somehow it still manages to press on through and really open this franchise up to waters that it probably could never have ever imagined.
The premiere of Next Generation Encounter at Ford Point had 15.7 million viewers for Nielsen ratings. Like, that is huge for TV back then. And on syndication,
Right.
like, it was breaking records out of the gate, which is crazy.
Oh, like I said, I read a statistic. I think it was at the point of its end run, it was still only available in 90% of markets. So
Hmm.
you're talking about a show again hitting numbers and doing these kind of things and growing to a point that which is so foreign to us today, not being available everywhere. Like to
Hmm.
think that there's literally people who couldn't have watched this or weren't able to watch it simply because it wasn't being offered in their area and
Right.
nobody picked it up for the syndication rights. But yeah, again, groundbreaking. Here we are 20 years since, TOS and it's still finding a way to be groundbreaking. Let's jump into it. We're going to go season by season. Like if you've been following us like we did for the movies.
Yep.
Yeah, we're settling into a nice groove here. Star Trek: The Next Generation, season one. The new crew: Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, played by Patrick Stewart, William T. Riker, played by Jonathan Frakes, Commander Geordie LaForge, played by LeVar Burton. Now, those three were the first ones announced.
Yes. Yeah.
So they were the heavy hitters for the show, which is kind of all coming from different backgrounds. But honestly, I know this might seem like hometown bias. To me, LeVar is the biggest one out of that group, just simply because of what he had done between Roots and Reading
Yes.
Rainbow at this point. Like,
And that was the thing as a kid I latched onto because I knew LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow. I mean that show was also quite groundbreaking. And Yeah, so he was the biggest name to me as a kid that I knew of.
Continuing with the crew, we have Denise Crosby as Tasha Yar, Michael Dorn as Commander Worf, Gates McFadden, Dr. Beverly Crusher, Marina Sirtis playing Troy, Council Troy, and then Brent Spiner playing Commander Data, and then Will Wheaton rounding it up as young Wesley Crusher. It's a big cast, especially compared to the
Right.
the original series. You're extending it essentially by three more main characters and going into it. But yeah, just thoughts on the cast overall as a whole.
Um Obviously to me this cast is legendary for me. Especially and we'll get into it with Picard, Star Trek Picard, but this was my crew. This was the one that this is the crew that I'm really fond of. Obviously I wouldn't have posters on my wall, represent, nice art pieces representing this cast and these ships. But obviously TNG was foundational for me, and this crew to me is legendary. Patrick Stewart, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, he's my favorite captain. I'm just gonna say it.
Okay. Okay.
Well, one of my favorite captains, but I know a lot of people do the whole Kirk versus Picard debate, and for me that debate, there's hands down it's Picard for me.
Okay. Okay.
I'm just gonna put that out there right now, but no, the cast is phenomenal, and yeah, the first couple seasons of any show is going to be a little rocky as the actors find their characters and as everyone kind of gets into the groove of the show. But there's so many great moments with this cast, and I think the through thread throughout the entire series, because it's episodic. There's not really many story arcs. I mean, they'll pick up things here and there
Right.
that carry on season to season, but it's not like a DS9. But one of the through threads I like that really shows the camaraderie of the crew was the poker games. And
Mm.
that's why it meant so much for Picard to finally sit down at one of them at the end of the show. And so, yeah, it's a cast that grew over time. Some of them got promoted, and they went through different challenges as any crew does. But yeah, I mean, to me, this is the legendary crew. I love all of them, and it's hard to pick like favorite characters in this because I mean, I love Data, I love Picard, I love Riker more and more as the years go by. Dr. Crusher is the best, and I miss Pulaski too. I wish she was
Oh,
in
okay.
more of it. I,
Okay. Get to her in season
yeah,
two. Okay.
we can get into that too. But no, I just think um, the whole cast, even guest stars on the show, were phenomenal. They had some really major actors, and then then when Whoopi Goldberg joined the cast as Guinan, I mean, she was
Stop
a
jumping ahead, sir.
huge.
We're in season one. You're jumping ahead.
Season,
Season.
but no, I think the cast is really solid.
To me, the season one cast is a little bloated. I agree. It's honestly
Sure,
you drop Denise and you drop Will, and I think that's your core cast right there. That you really think of with the TNG cast.
yeah,
Um, it's an interesting group because I was watching Encounter Farpoint a little earlier,
mm-hmm.
just to refresh on it. And it's interesting how comparing it with TOS, for example. Yes, Kirk is the captain. Spock is science. McCoy is
Mm-hmm.
medical. Uhuro's comms. Scotty's engineering. Sulu flies the ship, and then Chekhov was kind of tactical-ish. You get a different set of positions here, and they kind of, and the way they reinforce from that first episode is kind of funny. Like you had this whole new concept, even though Spock was the first officer, played that second in command. You now have
A
a
dedicated,
dedicated first officer.
right?
So it's funny, like I'm watching one of the first interactions between Riker and Picard, and like I'm like, oh, in my older mind, I see what they're doing
Yeah,
productively here in defining this role, so that now you understand what he's supposed to be on the show without being like, hey kids, here's what a first officer does. And so it's just again kind of going back to see like, oh, I didn't realize that as a kid, but now I'm like, I see how you're merging these two needs here. And yeah, it was just interesting to see how this first episode they kind of introduce the way they introduce all the new characters and what their roles and the positions are. And sometimes it's a little knocking you over the head, but again, you're introducing this audience, which is probably a little, a little half on, how on this new concept, this new show to get them to buy in and go further with it.
And it was such a huge gamble to have like a series villain, quote unquote, with Q, like right off the bat. I mean, it definitely showed the danger of like going out further into space. But I think like especially for the premiere, it's definitely uneven. I'm not gonna say it's like the greatest premiere because it's not. But
Gene inserted Q all up into DC storage, so we know it's a little.
right, and yeah, so I will say that the first season a little rough, but there are some gems in it, and it's funny because I think I told this in the intro episode, but when my wife Teresa was when Picard, like right before Picard came out, she saw the trailers and was really interested in watching TNG. And I'm like, we have a very compressed time to like have a TNG crash course before Picard. So
78 episodes overall. That's
so I have like a spreadsheet of every single episode from every season, and I highlighted the green ones that are like most important, in terms and for every season. And I'm actually surprised how many I marked green in season one.
what
So,
are some highlights for you for season one? What are the things you love from season one?
um, where no one's gone before,
Okay.
that's a highlight. Data lore.
Okay.
So introducing lore, that's a huge one. Um, what else? Uh, Skin of Evil, obviously the death of Tashiar, which I mean, it's the death of a main character. Um, like coming of age, I think is a good one too.
Okay.
Um, let's see. I think it was Heart of Glory. That's another great one with because it really dealt with the Klingons and Worf. It was a really Klingon centric episode, and and conspiracy just because of the gross factor at the end.
I will say there's not a lot of episodes in season one that I'm like I want to watch this one, or they're ones that I will gladly watch. Like when I
Right.
turn on and TNG is on and I can instantly recognize it's a season one, I'm kind of like, hey, yeah.
Yeah.
But kind of like the fact, kind of like you said with your wife and highlighting and being able to highlight things that are important. Like looking back, I was looking over the list of episodes and the things that were established. I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of foundational things here. Like, yeah, Q and Encounter at Farpoint, bam, right off the bat, you get another good, you get some different, you're getting strung out in the universe because yeah, the new 5-year mission, we're out further than we've ever been before, so it's new waters. You're getting the Klingons, and okay, yep,
Yeah.
we're starting to see some more things of about them and lore and introduction to characters. So you do get a lot of foundational things that we do see referenced and coming back to later on in the series.
Now I did mark two in red that I was like, we are completely skipping these because they are some of the worst.
Got to be Code of Honor has got to be one of them, right?
Undoubtedly, that
Okay.
is the worst episode of Star Trek ever. I No one should watch that episode. That should just be purged from history. That's a horrible episode.
I'm thinking, how you get to, when a show comes on or something and you get the little warning in the front of it. This episode should always just start with just a big flashing racism, racism,
Racism,
racism ahead. Just be prepared.
racism alert. It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So good. We're good. What's the other one?
Angel One. That
The
stinks.
Binars, really? Okay.
No, no,
No.
no.
That's
100011.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Sorry.
no, no. Angel One is the one where it's like the planet run by women and they're all like
Oh,
scantily clad, and like Wesley steps over the thing and everyone's like, oh no.
yeah.
um yeah, it sucks. Or no, wait, that's not Angel One. Oh man, I'm all over the place.
No. Angel One, yeah, dominate, but yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just it's that's a mess of an episode.
It's season one. It's bad. Like half these stories are, as we know at the time, literally some ideas from Star Trek Phase Two, things that were so original. Like it, yeah. Season one is a mess. It's the skin tight jumpsuits. It's Star Trek still trying to find its way. So yeah, moving on, we get to season two. But as Eric mentioned earlier, we get the death of Tasha Yar right before the end of season one because Denise wasn't happy with character progression for her character, which I hear that and I'm interested sometimes because yes, this character progression wasn't a thing back then. Like this is still very episodic TV. I hear that sometimes I want to be like, what were you really expecting in terms of progression? I
Yeah, I and it's sad because when Skin of Evil did air, and when I've rewatched it, it is a very sad episode, especially towards the end and with Data. And um it's crazy to me that the events of that episode are even referenced all the way into First Contact. Like the last time he made love essentially was with Tasha. And that's touching to me because it was kind of like the first hints of emotion from Data, but not really. But we could see kind of him growing from that experience. And Tasha's a mixed bag for me because she's such an interesting character. She was a character like she was she grew up on a horrible planet
Mhm.
and got taken away from that situation and raised in Starfleet, and strong woman character, and like she kicked ass in her own right. But knowing what you know about the whole series, it's like having her and Worf
It
was
wouldn't. Yeah,
always a problem.
it wouldn't. Somebody would have had to have gone.
And
Yeah.
and I'm sorry to Denise to Denise Crosby because I think she's such a great actress, and I'm so glad they were able to bring her back for the role of Sayla, and like to
Stop jumping ahead.
I
Stop
know
jumping ahead.
I guess I'm jumping
Stick
ahead.
to it.
But no, I think the loss of Tasha was you know unfortunate, but it had to be done for the show to progress as it did because I'm sorry, but between her and Michael Dorn, Worf is such an important character, or became much more of an important character, after she left, and it's unfortunate, but for her character, but she left an impression.
I do think it's a shame because while TNG is definitely a progression for
Hmm.
its female characters over TOS. Like TOS was like, "Yep, we're on the bridge. It's great to have her here. Awesome." TNG, it's Tasha was very much forward.
Yes.
It would have been a very strong. And that's not to say Troy and Crusher were weak, but Tasha was definitely more of a presence than Troy and Crusher. But also Troy and Crusher were bigger than Uhura was back then. So like there's progression being made here, but I do think there
Hmm.
could have been more progression made having a character like Yar on the show throughout
Yeah,
its run.
I
'Cause,
wish I wish
yeah.
they made it work in some way. I wish they did. It would have been a much different show had she stayed
Ooh,
on. That's for
that
sure.
that would yeah that could have been interesting because as you said, her and Worf together do not. It's the same character almost to an extent, and
And it felt like Worf was so in the background until you
she gets
know
yeah.
until Heart of Glory.
Yeah, very much so.
Hmm.
So yes, as we head into season two, Tasha Yar is gone. Beverly Crusher is gone as well because Gates McFadden isn't happy with her time on the show currently. As we said, there's just a lot of mess going on.
I'm
Too
telling you,
much
Chaos
chaos.
on the Bridge is so great. If you want to know the dirt that was happening at the start of TNG, up until Roddenberry's death, I mean, like we said before, it's a wonder this show made
Show
it
should
7 seasons.
The
Yeah,
show should not have made it. So yes, Gates McFadden is gone, and so we have Catherine Muldaur, who is back once again, and this time in a recurring role as Dr. Pulowski. Um, she didn't quite gel for me. It never gelled for me outside of her interactions with Data. I
sure.
do enjoy those.
Mm-hmm.
It never quite gelled with Dr. Pulaski for me with this crew.
Well, even in the show, the crew didn't gel much with Pulaski in a lot of respects. She was a very hard person to get along with. But I think they were trying to bring those like Southern McCoy sensibilities to Pulaski, and I don't think it worked.
Side note,
As
side note. You just because I couldn't believe I didn't mention this with season one encounter at Farpoint. Even though they had the issues, sorry, because you mentioned McCoy.
yes,
Sorry, rewind. Sure, we got to do it. As much as encounter at Farpoint, it's not a perfect premiere.
right,
That beauty, that moment of the torch essentially being passed with
yes,
McCoy and Data, and once again letting viewers know it's comfortable. This is Star Trek. Data is Spock-esque. He's that kind of other,
mm-hmm.
which is what you need in Star Trek. Data's a great one, but it's because you never I watch this. I was like, they never say it's McCoy. It's never like, oh, we got McCoy, Admiral McCoy, Admiral McCoy. No, you just got this old man in makeup. You hear that
Yep.
voice. Oh, you hear that unrecognizable, that recognizable voice, unmistakable voice, and his conversation with Data, like, oh, it's comfortable, and it's just yeah, Trek doing what it does. And once again, this shared universe, these characters existed. They're here. We're moving forward before this is really being done on TV a lot.
Yeah, and that's that was such a special moment. Just to see that McCoy live that long, first of all, which was great. But he was an admiral. He had advanced his career, and I just like that. He's just on the Enterprise. Like, hey, this is a good ship. I love the name.
Yep.
And then the fact that him and Data, and so like the him and Spock of it all. Yeah, really great moment. Really great moment, and it started a tradition of Star Trek series in the Berman era having a kind of torch off, torch being passed, send
We'll
off
get there. We'll
with the
get there.
character. But yeah. No, I liked it. I liked it.
Okay, sorry.
Good cameo.
Rewind back to season 2.
All right.
Pulaski. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, couldn't believe. I was like, I gotta bring this up. I literally watched the episode earlier today. Gotta bring. Okay, sorry. Dr. Pulaski. Yeah, just not really gelling with the crew. It didn't feel like a truly fitting replacement. It just kind of felt like, okay, we got this character, and we don't know what to do with her necessarily.
Yeah, and there are a couple like really good episodes with her in it. For me, the top episode in this season is Measure of a Man.
I mean, that's a top Star Trek period.
Period. Yeah.
Classic Star Trek courtroom case episode. You can't really go wrong with those. You don't, and this one is one of the creme de la cremes, certainly.
Yeah. So, and I thought she had other good scenes, and I like there is an arc with her because towards the end of the season, she had that respect for Data, and she was kind of getting along a little bit more with the crew. But yeah, there's just like a throwaway line like Beverly's at Starfleet Medical or whatever, and it's like, wait, what is happening here? But it also kind of showed just, I guess, in the universe of Star Trek that this is a big moving universe. Like things can change. Like we lost Tasha Yar the last season, we lost Beverly Crusher for this season, and we gained a new crew member. So it just makes the universe of Star Trek feel a little bigger because like people come and go, people
Yeah.
transfer. So in the universe sense, it kind of works. But she's definitely a different kind of doctor.
So Measure the Man. So before we get to the episode, so yeah, Dr. Pulaski, we got, as you mentioned earlier, Whoopi Goldberg as Guinan, the bartender down in 10 Forward, new set for the show on the
Yeah.
Enterprise. Her role, one who was inspired by Nichelle Nichols' Pretoria of Uhura in the original series and was kind of
Hmm.
campaigned to get on the show, finally gets the opportunity and provides an interesting character who becomes a what's I don't friend is not the word, but a confidant,
Yes.
I don't even know if that's the quite word for Picard. The relationship between her and Picard becomes really interesting, and explore as we explore it throughout the series.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Oh, and yeah, there's just so many great. They're building upon what was established in the first season, but I like the introduction of Data's love of Sherlock Holmes
Mm-hmm.
with Elementary Dear Data, and again it's a fun holodeck episode, um, and I love it. But there's also repercussions that happen because of that one. So it's very much like these first two seasons just set the seeds for the entire show.
I mean, we get the introduction of the Borg. With Q, a pop up of Q. So we're starting to see this character kind of.
Yep.
It's crazy. He only has like I think it's what 16 appearances, I believe, throughout
Yeah, I
the,
believe so.
which is so you such a monumental character to literally only come in just in less than 10% of the franchise of this Radish's episodes. To have such an epic, I think this is his third at this point. It becomes his third appearance, and we get he
Right.
flings across, and we get the introduction to the Borg. So that's
Which, and then, like, we only got hints of the Borg in season three, and we'll obviously talk about season four. But to see a potential enemy so early on, and it was so dangerous, and then, Q kind of pulls them back, and you're like, wait, are we going to have to deal with these guys
or
again?
how far were they?
Yeah, yeah.
That we get the introduction of Worf and his love saga, the start of his love saga with Kalis, the emissary, one of my mother's favorite characters. She always loved the strong. Oh,
Kalar.
Kalar, sorry, yeah, not
Yeah.
Kalis, Kalar. My mother loved all the strong female characters. Kalar was one of her
Oh,
favorites.
yeah.
She's the badass, but yeah,
And
Worf.
Alexander.
No, that's not yet. Not yet.
Oh,
Yeah, not yet. I guess this is how Alexander gets made.
oh, right.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and there is some. Yeah. So yes, no, you're right. You're right. But no, and there's some more family too because Riker deals with his dad in one of the episodes,
Yeah.
and I know Riker. This is the big, the big change for Riker with the beard, with the facial hair, uh, which was a significant improvement.
Yeah, babyface Riker is always weird. Sometimes I'm like, oh, yep, season one, it's babyface Riker. Okay, yes.
And that's how you can easily tell. Suits with the stripes and no beard Riker, season one.
Dudes with the stripes,
Suit with stripes
Riker,
and beard, season two. Anything else is three and above.
It's so apparent. It's so visual. Speaking of other, I guess important characters, we also get, Troy's mother, played by none other than Majel Barrett, who becomes a reoccurring character throughout this series and Deep Space Nine. And I don't think she made a Voyager appearance.
No,
I don't.
she wasn't. No.
Yeah, she wasn't.
But no, D Space Nine. Yeah, Loxana Troy. Yeah, so it feels like there's more about family in in this show because yeah, we even get the episode Schizoid Man where Data meets his supposed grandfather. So
Yep, yeah, yeah.
there's kind of like these building blocks again first two seasons of the show really set the stage for the rest of the series.
Well, 'cause especially at this point, we all get the infamous clip episode at the end of season 2 because you have the writer strike going on.
Terrible.
Terrible, terrible.
So stupid. It's yeah, that was not on my must watch list. Definitely not.
Anybody who has that one as a top 10 favorite, yeah,
I'm questioning.
Questions. So we somehow make it past the first 2 seasons. Gene Roddenberry's health is kind of in the dumpsters, unfortunately, and we now enter what is really called the Rick Berman era. Berman comes in and is able to put his hand on the show and really establish what, when I think, if you're not thinking TOS, you think of Trek, this is what you think of. Like, this really becomes the foundation going forward with Trek, with season 3 and beyond for this franchise. How do you feel about the Rick Berman era? Because when brought up earlier.
So, I mean, it's a mixed bag for me, and you know, we'll talk about it more like in terms of Voyager and Enterprise, but you know, for better or worse, I mean, the Berman era is the core of what people think of Star Trek. It's you know, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, like that is right now a big bulk majority of Star Trek. So love him or hate him, I mean, you know, Rick Berman, Brandon Braga, you know, they
Yakutas are now heavy in it. You got Michael Piller. Like this is like Gene Roddenberry and his crew. That was that first family to take care of it. Now it's like this is the next generation, and they're really establishing and taking things forward.
Also, especially with this season, you had Ira Stephen Bear was a producer.
Yep.
Which would become huge for Deep Space Nine, and like you mentioned, Michael Piller, and Ronald D. Moore was also a story editor for this season. So I mean, he also became huge with Deep Space Nine. So this, you know, we talked about seasons 1 and 2 planting the seeds for the rest of the show, but season 3 and on planted the seeds for the rest of the, you know, quote unquote 90s Trek.
If looking at Next Generation as a whole, when it comes down to like my favorite seasons, like it's 3 and 5. Though I can flip back and forth between those. Like when I think of like these are my favorite runs of Trek for this show, like season 3, like you have a run here of, you know, Booby Trap, The Enemy.
Yeah.
You know, like yes, yesterday's Enterprise, Sins of the Father.
Oh my God.
Like, season 3 is one of those ones that is loaded. And of course, we'll get to the end of season 3, and it's that deserves its own thing.
But I will say there is way more green in this season. But no, you're right. Like also we get, you know, Deja Q. We get Captain's Holiday, which I really like. You get Sarek, which, oh my God, like who knew that? And of course, obviously, you know, Mark Leonard was there for the TOS movies.
Yep.
But for them to take that opportunity to jump his character forward and kind of like the end of a Vulcan's life. Very powerful. And you didn't even have Spock in that one. And it was still a powerful one.
It was a character that things that we always ask for, things we're like, make sense. You didn't need Spock. Like that was literally this story dealt with Sarek's character because outside of him being the father of Spock, he had his own life and role to play as a Federation ambassador. So yes.
And to find out he had another human wife after Amanda. So, you know, maybe, you know, he in some ways he still liked humans. And so it's like that was a deeply complex episode to learn more about Spock's father. Like that is such an important episode.
And really the range of like it was one of the first episodes to really show that Vulcans had these emotions, and they are like that performance by Patrick Stewart towards the end of that episode.
Oh my God.
Like that is that is some that's some that's that Shakespearean English acting background coming because
Yes.
my man is putting it in. And this is like, ooh, like this. That's good Trek right there.
And one of my favorite comedy episodes of Star Trek, Menage a Troy. I'm it's a funny episode. It's like when you think I don't know. I think Loxwana is hilarious.
She can be.
And I just love how annoyed Picard gets whenever she's there, like for anything. And that's just a funny episode. I really like that one. But yeah, there are a ton of great
we get
um
we get the introduction of Lieutenant Commander Barclay, Reginald Barclay, played by Dwight Schultz, who goes
yes.
on to make reoccurring appearances throughout the franchise. He makes here the movies and Voyager. So he becomes a pretty critical character to stories being told. We do get the return of Tasha Yar, which is crazy.
Yes.
It wasn't like you think. You hear the story, yeah, she left the show, but then here she is back, literally just a
It was like less
season
than
and a
two
half,
years.
yeah,
Yeah.
later to step into the shoes of the character in a incredible way. Because here we are, we get the introduction of the Enterprise C, in a classic.
Beautiful ship.
Oh, that the way because we didn't really talk about too much. I like how the Enterprise C becomes a clear, like I could see the transition from A in the Constitution refit to C to the D. The Excelsior class doesn't really fit in that lineage too much, but that
Sure.
the way they
Yeah.
did the Ambassador class really, because he's like, oh, okay, I can see how you get to the D from here, and the
Yeah.
elements it kept in there. But yeah, a beautiful ship, in its own right.
And we had the first episode directed by a member of the cast with The Offspring, and that was Jonathan Frakes' first directorial episode. And obviously, he has directed
Failure. He
many
failed.
more
He failed. It was
stories.
terrible. He did a horrible job. You know, the man. It's almost not Trek unless Frakes touch it in some way, shape, or form.
Right, and it's crazy that he was still directing up through Discovery and Picard, and I'm surprised he didn't direct an episode of Prodigy. I know animation's different, but man, the man is awesome. Jonathan Frakes is cool, but it started with season 3.
Season 3 really becomes like this. The show is locked in, and
Mm-hmm.
you got some great episodes here. It begins start Next Generation really is starting to build on itself. And then of course we get to one of the defining moments again. Like this isn't a Star Trek thing. This
This
is
is a TV history thing.
TV history thing. We have the best of both worlds, part one, with the cliffhanger, which at this
Oh my
time, like you got
god.
like cliffhangers don't get done. This was a gamble. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you think of cliffhanger, there are only two shows that come to mind. It is Dallas, because Dallas, but that was like,
Who shot JR?
Who Shot JR is an infamous cliffhanger. They were like the first real ones to do that. Star Trek The Next Generation with Best of Both Worlds was the second and really cemented it as like, oh, this is something you can do with Best of Both Worlds Part 1, which is an incredible hour of television.
I still get chills seeing that final 5 minutes of that show. And God, the best of both worlds. You want to talk about like building a seed for what's to come, not only with Locutus and Picard, which had lasting repercussions throughout the character's life, but just cementing the Borg as this terrifying, destructive force of power that
Yep.
would continue through multiple series.
This is the Borg being the like as simple as they are. These Borg are scary as a mug.
Yeah,
But major like this, you get the throwback or you get the recurrence again of Riker of questions around Riker's career. What are you doing here? Why
right.
aren't you ascending up? There's ships out there who want you to take the helm and be the man. And Shelby coming in, a strong female character. Like, shout outs to once again TNG continuing to do what Star Trek has done with, minorities and underrepresented people being in these
Mm-hmm.
positions of power. And a highlight, which I didn't realize he was on Star Trek doing this so early, but Dennis McCarthy
Mm.
is my favorite composer for Star Trek. Just
Oh, nice.
the work he does between TNG and DS9 is just the multiple things he does. And so you can't help but think of the end of this episode, that dramatic, that dun 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 dun,
Bum,
dun, and
bum,
it's just
bum.
like
And you're like, no. And I've seen, I've seen the cast interviews, and I think Patrick Stewart, had a moment where, this family, like, they were driving or something, and this family, like, had their windows down, and they're like, you ruined our summer, like, with the cliffhanger, like, because that, like you said, it wasn't done on TV. This was a major, like, people were like going nuts, like, what's
right.
gonna happen?
No
And
internet, no
yeah,
social media. We're not getting updates every second. Like this was, you had this, and that was it.
and that gave like a bump in the ratings too, because Best of Both Worlds had 10 million viewers, and then part two had like 12 million viewers. Like, people, the buzz was going for that
It is one of the greatest episodes of TV all time. It's considered
all
one of the
time. Yeah.
best television episodes all time. And so, as much as season three kind of cemented this show into becoming
Mm-hmm.
like at this point, you have best of both worlds, because yes, there were some questions about things going forward. There were concerns around Patrick Stewart of whether he wanted to continue in the role. Because again, we're dealing with
Right.
this is the early 90s, so you're dealing with and they've seen what happened to the original series cast. So you're talking about typecasting, do we being limited? Was the
Right.
show really being successful? And so yes, this helped cement it as an icon, and they continue to move forward. And that wait was only 3 months, which is
That's nothing. We got like sometimes like a year and a half between seasons
which
now.
is so it's which okay. I don't. I'll touch on this briefly now, because right now in this moment we have Strange New Worlds has attempted their best of both worlds thing, Barbara. Let's be honest, it was what it was. And yes, it's been a year and we're still waiting for part two. And here's the problem. We've been spoiled and seen so much already. We already know part two is going to be a success. I low key am envious of these times. Like, yeah, they dropped this and then it was silence for 3 months until you had no indication of what was
No
going to happen
idea. No idea.
for the start of season four versus but that 3 month anticipation was fervor. It was everywhere. And here we are, a year out. It's probably going to be a year and a half, who knows, by the time we actually get to see it. And it's almost like the stakes mean nothing, versus here the stakes were everything.
They were everything. And yeah, I mean, Best of Both Worlds, there's just so much about that. I love the character of Shelby and her coming in to this situation, and like the doubts that Riker has, like, am I going to be replaced as first
Oh,
officer? Like,
the tension is beautiful. The
my
tension
God, and I'm actually sad that we didn't get more Shelby after this.
knowing
Until,
yeah, and knowing
well,
what we do
yeah,
get, yeah, it is one of those things where, which we'll get as we continue to move on. Of course, now we're heading into season four,
yeah,
and TNG begins to move into an era where they do have some more consistent storylines, or they start to pick some things up.
right,
Roddenberry is, just being blunt, dead and gone. So there's a sense of freedom there.
right.
Although still not the norm for the time. They
Hmm.
do start to pick up some storylines, and Shelby, I think, is one of those opportunities. I think kind of it would have been nice to see her in some capacity of Trek. Um,
I think she would have been great if she showed up somehow in Deep Space Nine.
her and Cisco could have been. Her and Cisco.
Well, I mean specifically because
Ooh,
she was tasked at trying to find ways to defeat the Borg
And with the Defiant
and the
and
Defiant,
and
and
him
he's
having
like,
worked,
well,
yeah,
this was like there would have been a great, but that's whatever.
yeah,
Uh,
certain, yeah.
but yeah, season 4, I really love how this season goes out the gate because you got Best of Both Worlds 2, you got Family, which deals with the after effects of that. One
Yep.
of my favorite episodes of season 4, just because we get to know more about Picard and his family and the after effects, and they're on Earth, which we didn't get to see much of. And then Brothers, which is another great episode. So you've got 3 out the gate, that deal with family in some way, and like I think it cements that this crew is now a family.
It was interesting in doing some reading up on TNG how much of a theme throughout the show family is, which is never something that really jumped out at me. But
Mm-hmm.
in reading, it was like, oh, and I start, they say, season 7 is really about family, which it is, but it is a theme, like as you just brought up, these series of episodes that because it has made it a deal that yeah, this crew is a family. The Enterprise was a ship with families on it, and so you see a lot of these things dealing with, okay, how is the Starfleet life affect families? Because you have the episode later on in the series where yeah, the kid loses his mom after losing his dad on the mission. It's like, so family is a big theme for TNG, which
Yeah.
previously, like, really just over my head, had not been something that I'd really ever realized or even thought of before, but it becomes quite apparent, throughout the series.
And then even like so with Brothers, we were introduced to Data's father,
Doctor who
Dr.
we
Soong.
hear too much about, possibly.
Sure, but then also, I think another big aspect of family this season is the episode Data's Day, and we're seeing more of like Miles O'Brien, which I'm glad that TNG, because he's always kind of like in the background or somewhere, but you start to see the Star Trek tradition of building up those tertiary characters, which becomes way more important in Deep Space Nine, but you get the start of that more in season 4 of TNG.
Speaking of family, we have to talk about, I'm trying to remember. We might have missed him in season 3. Hold on, let me turn, since that's, yeah. Okay, so we missed, unfortunately. Again, but we're too older, gentlemen. We're getting up there. Um, Tony Todd as Kern. We just
In Sins of the Father, season
Sins of the
3.
Father in season 3, but then also, again, those stories of family, as we'll get to towards the end of season 4. Kern, ooh, Tony Todd is my favorite guest. Well, that's a tough one, but he is one of my
One
favorite
of.
guest actors in Trek. That is just a,
And we did, I'm not trying to date the podcast, but we did recently
yeah.
lose him. I have so much respect for Tony Todd. Like, it was crazy because he like followed my Twitter, and I know it's like, thousands of people that he followed. But, every once in a while, if I made like some kind of Star Trek related thing or commented on one of his
Yeah.
posts, he would take the time to like it or comment. And that meant a lot because I thought his performances in Star Trek, and not just in Star Trek, but him as an actor
Oh
in
yeah,
anything.
Candyman on, yeah, just
My God, he was iconic, and so that was definitely a deep loss. But to be the brother of Worf, Kern, like the full Klingon, like he is the only other actor that could be like Michael Dorn and him, just like
oh, that
you, oh,
intensity to bring, like
God,
that, he what he brought to that character anytime he was on the screen, just that,
right.
almost that almost like that voice Worf would hear inside of his head. Like, you are Klingon. Like, this is what it means. Don't get soft. You are Klingon, and what that means. And I always enjoy watching Tony Todd on the screen because he's tall. He's like 6'4", 6'5".
Right.
That's how tall I am. So I like to be like, oh, Okay, so that's my height. Oh, I'm this tall next
Oh,
to
that
Riker.
guy's
All
small
right,
and
that guy's really small, and so I always and just that one of them unrecognized, them unmistakable voices recognizable. Was like, yep, that is Tony Todd's voice, and so yeah, the energy he would bring to Kern each and every time, as Worf's brother. I'll have a lot more to say about Tony when we get to DX9, but yeah, he's one of my favorite guest appearances throughout Trek. But like so far, and so as we get towards the end of season 4, one of the favorite things I love about Star Trek: The Next Generation was what it did for the Klingons. It becomes one of them
yes,
thorough lines where we really get to see, like, we get more expansion on who the Klingons are, who they are, their beliefs, their system. Hell, like I have Klingon tatted on my arm. Like that's how much I love.
nice.
Like that's the House of Clark. Like Klingons are like my favorite race in Star Trek, and so some of my favorite episodes are the Klingon ones in Star Trek, and especially when you get to like that Sins of the Father storyline that kind of
Oh my
continues
god.
on. Which is itself is a continuation of kind of Picard's interaction with Klingons too, and that being able to see the other, like Star Trek really works with an other. And so as Spock was the other in TOS, Data was an other in TNG, but
Hmm.
Worf was also an other. That lens to see, hey, this is my culture, which I am equally proud of, and love and participate in. And these are the areas we clash. These are the areas where we mesh up. We don't like each other sometimes. Like those moments where Worf even puts Picard in his place sometimes where it is flipped, like, yeah, my command, also, but not here. we we not here. So it's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what TNG did for the Klingons is it's foundational because again, it carried through the rest of just the franchise. And there's especially in this season, there's a lot of war focus and what's going on with the Romulans and the Klingons and Duras, the House of Duras, which becomes a big plot line. And I love the journey of Worf in this season as well. And again, just a lot of great episodes in this season.
And I think what essentially Redemption does, which becomes the cliffhanger for season 4, it's the merging of like a variety of different storylines within Trek.
Yeah.
So you have here Worf representing the first Klingon to be a Federation officer, though, and that clashing of life between Starfleet and the Klingon warrior way of life. You have the repercussions of what they did in yesterday's Enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
with Tasha Yar going back in time with the Enterprise C. So now you get Sayla, her daughter, as a villain. The introduction of that in this, which once again having Denise Crosby come back
Which is
again, like
great. Yeah.
it's great. And this commingling between, we know the Klingon houses always be warriors. Yeah, you have this side, the Duras family, which we've seen before, hungry for power. Yeah, we're gonna join up with the Romulans. So it is like this mixture of almost every of some major things in Trek coming together for one story.
And what's funny is because um season 4 ended with Redemption Part 1, which is actually the 100th episode of Next Generation. So this was a big milestone in its own right. That came out in June 91, and Undiscovered Country came out in September of 91 along with Redemption Part 2. So not only are you seeing the Klingons being built up in TNG,
Uh-huh.
but that kind of set the groundwork for Undiscovered Country to show the background of how the
How we even got
piece
there. Yeah.
started. And so, like, if I was, or like I'm thinking of someone like my age now, like in their 40s at that time, which is
Mm.
probably my dad or whatever, but like it's like just to think about that in terms of, wait, I'm seeing it, how these events play out in the future time, and now I've got a movie coming out about how the peace with the Klingons came about in the first place. Like that just shows a level, and that's what I'll always respect about Star Trek, is that with this one continuity, they're able to like make things work even in the timeline, like going back in the timeline, and with these
Mhm.
movies that it's like the writers of the movies and the TV show, they were coming together to tell a cohesive part of how the Klingons and the Federation deal with each other.
Well, not even that. Like this is a special time because we'll probably touch on this really when we talk about the TNG movies. But we
Sure.
a little bit here is this was special because once again, this is Star Trek doing what doesn't get done. Like we are spoiled now, where we live in a world where we've got Marvel TV shows and Marvel movies at the same time, and each is influencing another.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek at this time is the only franchise to really have major motion pictures, not made for TV movies. Like
Nope.
you've had a TV show and they've done some made for TV movies, but even then there wasn't necessarily continuity. One wasn't influencing the other. Generally it would be TV movies, something like Knight Rider. It would be TV movies long after
Right.
the show has stopped airing. That's how they're continuing. No, this is a special. You have a franchise with a show on being aired also while doing movies, and they're telling similar stories. You're seeing different pieces of being story being told at the same time on both mediums. That wasn't being done back then. I could only imagine. I mean, we were there, but still being
Yeah.
young, I like that's mind blowing because we're so spoiled by that now in our in our entertainment.
And at this time, the end of season 4, or like the midpoint between season 4 and like the beginning of season 5, that 1991, that was the 25th
20
anniversary of
25th
Star
anniversary.
Trek.
Yep.
And I think that's like the stars, pardon the pun, kind of aligned, because you had 5 episodes of a successful Star Trek show that at this point way more than original series made.
Yep.
And to have 100th episode for any TV show is a big milestone.
I mean,
And
Star Trek was in culture
at this point, yeah.
incredible levels. We'll get into depths on that in the TNG movies one, but Star Trek level of culture, like it was no longer just some nerdy thing, something you enjoyed. No, this was everywhere on an existence level. Whether you were a fan or not, you knew of Star Trek. It was everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, where are we at? Wait, this season 5? Season 5.
Season 5.
Season 5 is Redemption Part 2. What's some of your favorite? Like I said, this outside of season 3, this is
I have to agree with you. This is a huge season. Just a couple of my favorites. Darmok. I mean, come on.
Here's how the season starts. Redemption Part 2, Darmok, Ensign Ro, the Silicon Avatar, which is the crystalline entity, bringing that back. You have Disaster. You have the game.
Unification.
Matter of Time. Then it slows down a little bit. But that is the first 9 episodes for the season. The first, that is how things get going.
And in my Picard rewatch, all of those made the list except Silicon Avatar, because it wasn't that important for Picard.
It's not that important, but it's a good, strong.
But that good chunk of season 5, that is a strong start to a season, and that's showing that TNG at this point was a well-oiled machine. Oh, yeah. They knew what they were doing.
It's in. We got the good 2-piece uniforms, the Riker maneuver, the Picard maneuver. It is a well-oiled machine. We know
so many maneuvers.
So many maneuvers. This is the show firing on all levels, and really, I think it's so smooth the way they're bringing things back while also moving forward, and the way they're playing in a way that is not forced. Like even as you mentioned, because this is the 20th anniversary, so you get an episode like Unification that doesn't feel forced in the story.
No, it doesn't. It was surprising. It was surprising, but it wasn't forced. And again, if you think about it, audiences just saw Spock in the movie in Undiscovered Country. And so obviously Leonard Nimoy was available, and but to continue that storyline of Spock, that he kept on being an ambassador, and now he wants to reunite the Vulcans and the Romulans, which is almost becomes his life's work, and it
Yep.
does.
We go,
It
yeah,
does for
that
the rest of his
we know
life.
that continues on. Yep.
Yeah, and again, the repercussions in the Star Trek universe because of his actions are felt all the way until Discovery, into the 31st century. So, oh my God, having I remember watching Unification as a kid because by that time I knew who Spock was, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, it was incredible. It was just so incredible to have him back, but be a natural part of the story. And plus, it's fun to see Picard and Data as Romulans. I still have those action figures because I think it's
Ah,
hilarious.
and again, it's also a continuation of the relationship that Picard established with Sarek.
Yep.
So we're seeing, like, we're not just seeing Star Trek: The Next Generation reference itself. Like, it's referencing TOS and itself. While like that is that's money, baby. That's the kind of storytelling we want to see happen. Because again, it didn't feel forced. Because at this point, yeah, we had McCoy in the premiere. At this point, Scotty James Doohan has also made an appearance.
Hmm.
He makes a great appearance as Scotty. Again, Star Trek Next Generation doing a thing where it's kind of honoring what came before
Yeah.
and taking it forward with care and showing how it still matters. Yeah, these characters, they continue to live lives. Like, it wasn't just the original. It was a great way to show that all these pieces are moving at the same time and continuing to just build a universe.
One of Another one of my favorites this season, and this season is just packed with amazing episodes. It's the Inner Light. I mean, Picard living an entire lifetime in the span of a couple minutes, and the Resican flute and how that
Mm-hmm.
carries on, all the way into Picard. Like, I love that they use the Resican flute for like the theme of Picard. But no, it's just these amazing episodes that have lasting impacts for the characters and the show. And I would say season 5 is one of the strongest seasons of TNG. Like, it's at the top.
A lot of the episodes were the ones that I know the most, or I recognize the most, or watch the
Hmm.
most. Yeah, they come from season 5, and this is like simply because again, this it just happens to be that way because and as we grew up until you got to the later 2000s, unless you had the VHSs of this, you just caught what you caught. You didn't know. You didn't always know. So,
Yeah, you didn't know what season it might have been.
or
Yeah,
or
for
or,
sure.
or what number or where it was in the season. So it wasn't until later, like, oh, okay, this is how this flows. This is how this comes about. And oh
I
yeah.
remember seeing the game like all the time on syndication when I was a kid. Those damn like floating orbs and stuff on the screen. Man, I got sick of that. But no, it was on a lot.
I mean, yes. Yeah, season 5. Just, I mean, yeah, Inner Light. Dennis, like, once again, Dennis McCarthy and the music work,
Yeah.
during this era of Trek. You've got Cause and Effect. Kelsey Grammer guest starring
Oh,
as a captain for 30 seconds.
and you know
Just
what? Another Jonathan Frakes directed episode.
yeah, yep, yep.
He got
So
the good ones, and that was written by Brandon Braga. So we get a little bit more of his influence. The Outcast, which was also this season, was written by Jerry Taylor, and she went on to produce Voyager. So you're seeing a lot more names that become bigger in Trek as it goes on. Like, this is TNG was the start for a lot of these people's careers in Trek and beyond.
so we get to the end of season 5. Times Arrow, probably one of the weaker two-parters, in the I
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
one of the weaker ones. It's an interesting story. It's not bad, but it's just a little out there. But I think that's one of the beauty is you can have those things. Like, you have the freedom when
Yeah.
you're doing a 26 episode season. It doesn't all have to be perfect. We have the blocks and freedom here. Like, these are the blocks that we know Trek is built on,
Hmm.
and they had the freedom to do so because, yeah, you had 26 episodes a season. And it's not these. I'm a little old man rant right here. It's not these 10 episode seasons. Like this
Yeah.
was 26
You
episodes.
could have like
Yes,
stinkers and
right.
like middle of the road
Yes,
episodes, and yeah, you could afford to have that because you had 26
it's
episodes.
it's it's the stuff. It's the stuff. It's the little stuff we're seeing brought that we love to see as the
Yeah.
Easter eggs now. It's like, oh, they brought this random thing from this horrible episode. Well, unless you had that horrible episode, you don't get to bring this random thing. So it's really the food we are eating off of.
And with Time's Arrow, I loved in Lower Decks when they brought like the Samuel Twain, like
I'll say, good sir.
I say, and then they're all like, uh,
Which is yeah.
yeah,
And so yeah, it's even though like Times Arrow was a iffy episode, like yeah, it gives fuel. So yeah, I can't wait till we get to go to the next talk and stuff like that. Okay,
oh my god,
stay current. So TNG season 6, of course, starts with Times Arrow Part 2. Funky time loop paradox. But hey, that's what Trek does best. Again, we're
I
seeing
love a good time travel story, and look, I loved how they explored that Guinan was around.
yeah, yeah. She's been around. It's gonna sound bad. She's been around the block. She's been here a long time. She's been here a long time.
But yeah, I like the implication that she was on Earth in the past, and yeah, it's a great extension of her character too.
And it's kind of crazy, like to think, like putting myself in Guinan's shoes, like you see things happening. So like, how crazy is that to be like, oh, okay, yep, you're about to meet me, or
Hmm.
because you got at some point you got the paradox that you know what's about to happen because you've been there, so you're waiting for this time to be like, oh, Eric, you recognize our relationship now. I see that look. Like, okay, yep, you've gone back and had that. Like, and so it's got to be kind of weird to be like let's just say that was me and you, like for however many years we know each other before this thing. Like, I know in my head there's like
Yeah,
years of our relationship that you haven't even experienced yet, just because I've been here so long. And you like, yeah, that is funky. That's just some funky stuff.
it is, and um, with season 6, we've this is the first season that two Star Trek series are airing at the same time with
Yep.
with Deep Space Nine, and I
You get some interesting
love,
plays there.
but I love Birthright Part One because we see that full on crossover. We see Bashir interact with Data, which was like so mind blowing to me. I think,
That's the one where
um,
Riker interacts with Quark too, right?
yeah, and that was just mind blowing to me because it was you didn't think about it like wait, we're getting crossovers, and it's like, yeah, we had crossovers with TOS, but now we've got two crews interacting, and they're both active.
That shared universe again.
That shared
Yeah.
universe, yeah.
Except
And
this is
to
the
see
first
the
time.
Enterprise D docked at Deep Space Nine is so beautiful. It's a beautiful sight. I love it.
Real models, real models. So yeah, you got a couple of two-parters. Like I said, we were talking about birth right here. You've got
Hmm.
Chain of Command, which is one of those when you talk about you know
Oh
TNG.
my God,
There are
Jericho.
4 lights. The Chain of Command is one of the ones with
Oh,
Jericho, and you start to see Cardass. There's been some slow Cardassian bringing in since the fourth season. You've had some stories with the Cardassians, so it's like, okay,
right.
once again, painting that picture of a bigger universe because the Cardassians are our main foil for the entry that is
And
Deep Space Nine.
and we didn't mention the season before, but Ensign Rowe as a major character and building that plot. And she was supposed to be on Deep Space Nine, like her character was supposed to continue, but obviously didn't. But again, it's that building of the universe. We only know of these conflicts that is the premise of Deep Space Nine because of the groundwork that TNG
Right.
laid.
Again, kind of being able to lay some eggs. I'm sure some were much more so intentional than others, but that
Hmm.
ability to just kind of exist in and to have something else be able to be like, oh yeah, we can kind of pick that up, we can bring that in, or hey, could you insert this a little bit so we can, it's a that Berman area, that Berman area, there was some care with how this thing was kind of managed. Regardless of how you may feel all the way around about it, there was some care, at least in this area, that yeah, we're going to make these two things work. And again, in a realm where that consecutive storytelling wasn't the norm. Like this is it's still very much so episodic, even though TNG on a level is beginning to, is continuing some of these through threads. What's like a favorite for you on season 6? Is what's one that's just like that's it right there.
Man, I think out of all of them, I really like Tapestry
Okay.
because we explore that what if with Picard, like if his life took a different turn, and um, many of the Q episodes have Q in the title somewhere. This does not. Um,
Yeah,
so so I love Tapestry because it feels like Q is trying to teach Picard a lesson, which is I know the theme throughout all of his appearances, but this was a direct like, no, you need to be who you are because if you weren't, you would just be some random science guy, like not the captain of the Enterprise. And it's kind of a moment of self doubt in Picard as well, which makes him more human. Like he's not a perfect captain all the time, and he's not a perfect human being. And so, just as a character exploration of Picard, I really like this one in this season.
that's a good one. I like Timescape is an interesting one for
Mm-hmm.
me. The one where I really enjoy the one where Ro, Guinan, and Picard they all become kids.
Rascals.
Rascals. That's just a fun one. Like that's just
That's
one like
just fun, yeah.
it's just kind of kooky, a kooky premise, but it works. And but
And
also it's
relics.
yeah. I mean, it's also that you mentioned relics because what's interesting here is like we're in season 6. So this is the getting towards the tail end of this franchise, but yet
Right.
in this season, towards the end of the season, we have a couple blocks that are laid for future things. So we get the introduction of Thomas Riker with second chances, who, and,
Yep.
and so that's Riker split personality. You get, relics, which would later on become huge, down the line. But at this point, it's kind of a throwaway episode. But I think it's one of the great things about this area is that yeah, even though TNG begins to tell some through stories, you still have a lot of these episodes which kind of just they leave things out there, which I think is what you need sometimes because then whether it's you're picking it up a season later or 20 years later, if you have the chance, it gives you these things to pick up. Like who would have thought 30 years later we're seeing more from an episode like Relics.
And what I love about Relics is it brings Scotty into the 24th century, which we don't talk enough about because it's mainly after this episode, it's mainly in the secondary media like books and comics.
Yep.
Scotty is a major player right now in the main Star Trek comic. He's like one of the crew of the current ongoing Star Trek comic. So his character is very much alive and kicking in the 24th century and, encountering these more engineering problems. So, yeah, I mean, it just all of TNG just sets up this wonderful 24th century playground that all the other series after it play in.
Sorry, I was saying Relics. I meant to say the Chase, but with
Oh,
but
well,
with
the Chase is a great one too.
but with Relic, like once again, Relics bringing in an original character with love, care, and affection that
Mhm.
doesn't feel forced. Like, yeah, we've already seen and know because because McCoy was alive, Spock was alive. Okay, yeah, Scotty very well may have found himself in a situation, had to be trapped in a transport, but that makes a whole lot of sense. And it provided an opportunity where, yeah, you get that interaction between him and Geordi. So you kind of get, yeah, the old engineer
Exactly.
with the new engineer, and then
And
get that
the
touching
classic
tribute
line, no bloody A, B, C, or
or
D.
D.
Like, I love that.
That tribute that like even a moment like that, it's fan service. It's a tribute. Yeah, like yeah, we gave you this opportunity. I guess
Yeah.
this is, but
But
it's
go
sweet and tender. like and
but
it,
but going back to the chase, no, you're right. Who would know that an entire season of Star Trek would be based upon the premise of this episode. I mean, it's crazy, but it's another one of those things that I think TNG does well. Is it leaves the door open for more exploration of the universe.
It does a great job. Like it is truly representative of its era.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to let's go to season 7 first.
All right,
We'll do
all
the
right,
overarching views in a second. But so season 6 ends with Descent Part 1. That's the one, where Data kind of gets abducted by Lore a little bit,
sure.
and they bring the Borg in again. It's
But Descent Part One, that's the first time I saw what would become the command center in Power Rangers.
that is true. That is true.
I
That is
saw the
true.
command center before it was in Power Rangers, and it was because of Star Trek, and that connects
Well,
my two franchise
well,
loves.
technically at this point, you saw it first in Star Trek 6.
Okay,
This
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
93. So you're seeing
Okay.
it again. You're being retweeted again. But certainly, yeah. It's
I don't think I saw Undiscovered Country in the theaters when I was
there we go.
9.
That makes sense.
I might have saw it on TV afterwards,
You
but
know you
yeah.
went to Blockbuster one night and got you a copy of Star Trek 6 for a Friday
Oh
night.
my God,
That was life back in the
Blockbuster.
day. That was
Oh,
life.
the good old days.
Oh, it's just yeah, transitioning into season 7 with Descent Part 2.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was Beverly gets to be in charge of the Enterprise though, so that is and we get to see her be captain in command and sit in the big chair, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, we move into season 7, which is the show kind of really at this point, although it was supposed to be 8, Paramount wanted to do things cheaply and get some more money for
Right.
itself the movie, so they decided season 7 would be the end so they can make that transition. But season 7 is still it's all right. It's
I
a
mean,
little disjointed sometimes.
yeah, it's not my favorite, but there are some key episodes here.
Such as what do you have marked as green on your rewatch?
Parallels is a good one, just
Okay.
because of the crazy, not alternate timelines, but alternate universes. So Star Trek laying the groundwork for that. The Pegasus, which would become infamous in
For
a
the wrong
bad
reasons.
way,
For the wrong reasons.
which we'll get to later. The aptly named Lower
Lower
Decks,
decks, which will become the inspiration
the first
later on.
Lower
Yeah.
Decks, yep. Journey's End is a huge one for me. Just such a great send off for Wesley Crusher.
Mm-hmm. I think you have two good send offs: Journey's End, and then the penultimate episode, Preemptive Strike,
Yes.
where with the way they wrap up Rose's story. I think those are two nice way. Those are two good ways.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, you've had these characters who have been in and out throughout the run. You
Yeah.
get what they just do.
And of course, I mean, all good things. Like,
We can spend our time here. Yes.
are you not a fan?
Oh no,
of
all
Oh.
all good things is probably
the
one of the
best
best
way to
series
end.
finales
Yeah.
across TV of all time. Like that, the way they do that, especially when you look at how it started with the trial and Q, and as disjointed as Encounter at Farpoint can be, to put a nice bow on it in a show that is not like retelling a concrete linear story. It is a little like this disjointed episodes, but to put a nice bow on it with All Good Things, that
So,
is great.
and all good things, because I said at the start of this that Encounter at Ford Point had 15 million people watching it. All
Seven.
Good Things had 17.4 million people watching this. It was like the most, like, out of every any episode. It was the highest rated TNG episode, and I think people were coming to watch the finale of an institution at this point.
It's like I said, this is Trek at Trek's peak. This is the end of an
Hmm.
era.
Hmm.
And we'll speak more about that as we do the lead up to the TNG movies. But this is Trek at its peak, and yeah, it's a beautiful send off. Like I said, spoiler alert. of all the series finales for Star Trek, yeah, and this is coming from a Deep Space Nine lover.
Hmm.
This is number one. Just the way that it sums up the show nicely, puts a nice bow on it, but then also just they just go off.
Yep.
It
There's
continues.
more adventures.
There's more adventures, and that's just it. Of course, this is them knowing we're going to do the films, but that's
Sure.
just even if the films aren't coming, that's a beautiful end to these 7 years
Hmm.
and what they've done with these characters. And as you mentioned, the importance of Picard realizing, yeah, I should have done this sooner, and joining that poker game with his pseudo family. And yeah, it is a beautiful, beautiful episode.
And it's just crazy to me because if you think, behind the scenes, as this one was airing, they were already in pre-production for Voyager at this point.
Yep.
Like the Star Trek machine in 1994, we are in the middle of like 90s Trek machine. This was peak Trek. You were right.
Coming off Generations, Deep Space Nine is in production, TNG is in production. You're probably getting to no, you're not off. You're coming off Star Trek 6. Generations is in production. Deep Space Nine is in production. TNG is in active production, although wrapping up.
Voyager's in
Got
pre-production.
pre-production for
Yeah.
Voyager. Yeah, it's firing on all cylinders. It
Hmm.
is that's incredible.
And God, the merchandising at this time was huge. That's what I remember the most growing up. Those freaking Playmates Star Trek figures, I still have boxes and boxes and boxes of in my basement. I
I've
mean,
I've got
yeah,
a bin. It's got the bridge in it. It's got a Romulan the Daedrix Warbird. It's got a shuttlecraft in it, and it's got a bunch of different TNG action figures. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I
Like
mean,
it's
my God, the merchandising at this point of the show was insane. And that's what I think I remember most aside from the show is just how much stuff there was for
oh
Star
yeah.
Trek out there.
It was as I mentioned, it was culture. Like I said,
Yeah.
it was you couldn't escape it, whether it's a joke on a TV show or a
Hmm.
movie, or yes, the merchandising, so the toys, the models, yeah, all like yeah,
Oh
it
my God,
was
I built so many Star Trek models growing up. But yeah, it's everywhere. And that's why TNG is like it has to be one of my top Star Treks because I'm all my love of Star Trek came from TNG. The only reason I'm still a Star Trek fan is because of TNG.
so you open the door. So right now, since we only got the two, you ranking TNG over TOS?
Oh, 100%,
Okay, I'm
yes.
not. I'm not mad at you. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. I'm not mad at you. You open the door, so it's like I'm right here. He stated it. Yeah, yeah. I'm not mad at you. This is
Yeah,
as much as TOS as much as TOS is Trek. TOS is Trek, and for a lot of people, unfortunately, TOS is all the Trek that they're interested in.
sure, sure.
As much as TOS is Trek, TNG is also Trek.
Yeah.
You don't you don't have current Trek now without TOS. But
Mhm.
you also don't have current Trek now without TNG. Like it takes both of them, and TNG carries as much of a weight in pushing it into the mainstream as much as it did. With of course some help from the TOS cast and the movies and
Mhm.
stuff like that. But TNG holds its own outright as a show and for what it was able to do in pushing it out there. So how do you feel as a whole? Now that we're on the other side, all
Sure.
7 seasons as a whole with the show. Favorite parts, highs, some lows.
I think the highs are the characters. There's so many like you can just because of the nature of 7 seasons of television, which would become the norm for D Space Nine and Voyager. Unfortunately, not for Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
But TV shows don't do this anymore. This was a classic time in TV history where yeah, 26 episodes a season, not a problem. And
September through May consistently, week after week.
and we had the May sweeps, like those big finales and big episodes. Yeah, I remember all of that. And so the highs for me for TNG are definitely the characters. I love Worf, Data, Picard. Um, there's some great Troy episodes too. I mean, what I love about TNG is that they weren't afraid to give everyone a focus at some point. And you can only do that with episodic television with 26 episodes. And we'll get into that, kind of the pitfalls of some of the newer Star Trek
Right.
series. But these characters that's my crew. And maybe a little bit more with Voyager, but we'll get back into that with Voyager. But again, the Enterprise D, freaking love that ship.
How do you feel about the Enterprise D?
It's iconic for me. Like there's so much nostalgia there, and may I be blinded by my love of TNG to. I know the Enterprise D, like for some people, it's like, oh, what the hell is that design? But I freaking love it. There's something about um, just the way it just feels weightless. It's got a nice saucer. It's got that how it transitions. It's got some beautiful nacelles. I'm no, I love the Enterprise D, and I remember like I have the blueprints for
Mm,
next year. I have the TNG technical manual. Like my love for technology and the starships is because of TNG. I mean, TNG is my love for Star Trek and everything, but um, it just fueled so much when I was a kid, and into when I was a teenager, and I love the show. It's undescribable for me what the show means to me because I'm a fan because of it.
I ain't mad at it. Enterprise D is an interesting one. She is
Yeah.
beautiful in her own right. I do not think she is ugly. Is she as beautiful as the Constitution refit? No. But I think she is reps like she's a cruiser. She's a family ship. She is not the bat like even though it's the flagship, it is not like,
Right.
oh, this is the heavy armament battleship. Not she can handle herself. Queer, we know that, but it's not the one I think of that's gonna be zipping in and out, although we did see her do some beautiful things when we get to Picard. Um yeah,
Which we'll get
it's
to, but
like she's nice, but she's not. Yeah, like I guess I don't have any hate
yeah.
for her. She's beautiful. I like, you can do the whole sauce for separating. It's a cool
Oh,
feature. We
so
only saw it a
cool.
couple times because it costs so much to do. But
Right. Right.
again, I think that she definitely has some beauty shots throughout the series where it is just like, again, want that beauty of a physical model and real effects and seeing it. And like, I think of like when it's fighting the Borg and you got the view of
Yes.
the Borg cutting beam right into the hull. It's just like, it's just a beautiful shot seeing that. And so she definitely has her moments.
And
Um,
just a little bit in a DC sign, but I love seeing the Galaxy class like in the Dominion War, and
mm,
like when the Jem'Hadar first attack a galaxy and blow up a Galaxy class starship, and they
they,
did that because
it
hey,
ain't TNG.
everyone has that connection to TNG. We just blew up a Galaxy class ship. No, I love it. I love the Enterprise D.
So where are you ranking it then? What's yours? We got three ships. What's
Oh,
what's
we
your
do
what's
have
your
three ships.
what's your updated ranking, sir?
It's the D. It's
Okay.
it's it's the Enterprise D. It's top.
Okay. So D refit one. Okay. I'm going refit D OG. So D is number two for me.
I'll go D refit and then OG.
Okay, okay, I'm not mad at you. Now
Yeah, yeah.
we have at this point seen four different enterprises. So in terms of enterprise ranking,
Sure. Mm.
not yeah, because we haven't seen that yet. No, yeah. So we got four. We got the OG, the refit, the C, and the D. In terms of enterprises,
In terms of enterprises, D A C O G.
okay, I am going A C D O G.
Okay.
That's I like I said, this C gives you kind of that old school, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a good mixture. Okay. All right. So before we get out of here, sir, how you feel about the whole switch from command being red now? The
Um,
reason why, well, I've heard the reason why is because Card and Riker just did not look good in yellow, apparently.
sure.
So, but how do you feel about the switch to command being a red, the red becoming the color for command and yellow becoming the color for engineering, and the TNG
It's
uniforms as a whole?
yeah. TNG uniforms, they're good. I mean, obviously, I love other series uniforms more, and we'll get into that as the show goes on. But I actually like that they changed to red being command because there's something about security being yellow because it first off it gets rid of that like red shirt, like all the red shirts die.
Even though
So
technically they didn't kill him, you had that red shirt who caught that freeze ray from Q in the
that's true. It's true.
he ain't
Um,
died though, but he caught the red shirt. Okay.
but I do like this color scheme because for one it carries through most of the rest of the franchise. Um, and yeah, I just like how it works. Like red is a commanding color, so it definitely makes sense. I just think it's cool. Like I don't know, somehow yellow and engineering and security that really works for me.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't have a preference. I'm not mad at it. It's just like
Yeah,
oh, okay, it makes sense. TNG uniforms are definitely when you think of Star Trek, like that is the
I
quintessential
definitely
Star Trek
prefer
uniform.
I prefer the later season uniforms. Obviously, the
Oh,
two
the two piece,
piece,
yes,
the
yeah,
more
yeah.
comfortable. And I think some of my favorites are actually the Picard variants
Oh, Picard bringing in the
with
the
the
captain's
jacket.
jacket. Yeah, that I ain't gonna lie. I want like that's a bad jacket. I
I
just have
love
not.
that. I
I
love
just
that.
yeah, that is a bad jacket.
Like
Uh,
Picard had some good fits in TNG and the movies. I'm not gonna lie.
how do you feel about the D bridge?
Um, the way I feel about it is when I watched Picard season 3 and it came back, I had a tear in my eye. So if that means anything, yeah, I love that freaking bridge. There's something about God that wood curve panel. It just no, I'm not. It's not a sexual thing or anything.
No, no, no,
It's
no, no,
just
no. I'm not.
it's
Hey,
it's beautiful. It's just beautifully crafted. My God, and I love the little hidden features on the bridge that not many people knew about. Like all those stations had that chair
the
that
chair
pulled
put out.
out
Yeah,
that blended with like the wall of the console. It's just ergonomically it. And I know we said the D. It's like that, and it was joked upon like when the show was airing. It's like the Love Boat of Star Trek or whatever. It's that
the
cruise
carpet.
ship,
The carpet.
the carpet. Okay, everyone. The whole carpet argument. Don't even get me started on that. But no, I love that bridge. It's spacious. It's functional. Like those two consoles at the front, like how it kind
Yeah.
of L's out and how they can swing away, and the captain's chair. Just everything works about that bridge. It's like the original series set the standard for what a bridge should be, but it's like the Enterprise D elevated that.
Enterprise D bridge is one of my favorites. I simply one. It's one of the few
Hmm.
that when you get a camera shot of it, you actually get the whole. You actually can see the whole thing. Like it's
Yeah.
something I've only recently, as kind of in this analytical mind frame, as I watch show, I was like, there are some bridges. It's like you never really get a shot of the entire thing.
Hmm.
D, you generally get a shot. I was like, okay, yep, there's the whole bridge. I can see it all. I understand it. Well, a lot of times, like we only get pieces and portions of it.
Hmm.
It's up there. It's not my favorite, but it's close. It's close. I'll put it at number one right now. Over surprisingly, I'll put it at number one over the refit bridge.
Wow. Okay.
As much as I love the refit, like I said, that D bridge is just kind of
It
it
is
is
nice.
it
Yeah. That's
is
that's
it is
definitely top for me as well at
it's
this
good.
point.
All right, sir. Before we get out of here, so final
Okay.
thoughts, not thoughts. Final thoughts. Star Trek The Next Generation, 7 seasons, 178 episodes.
Gosh.
It is as much as, like I said, as much as TOS is one half the house, this is the other. Like it takes
Hmm.
these two to build the house. We're looking at a franchise that
Yeah.
made history on multiple levels. It built upon what came before masterfully. TNG, sir.
Look, I think TNG is just one of the greatest Star Trek seasons just because of the foundations it laid. There is so much of the rest of Star Trek that's tied to this TNG era. We talk about TOS being foundational, but uh, TNG was also foundational in its own right for kind of the modern Star Trek. And um, yes, it can be horribly dated at times, like it can be stuck in that, late 80s, early 90s. But I think, I don't know if you're listening to this and you've never seen Star Trek, I would definitely start with TNG if
So
you
this would
can.
be the intro door. This the one.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
it was my intro. Um, and it's a good entry point, I think, and it was an entry point for a lot of people. Um, so TNG is just it's a huge milestone just in my life. And yeah, if you can, definitely watch like on streaming or the Blu-rays, the remastered, because the remaster makes
Ooh.
this look like a modern show. There's some episodes when Teresa and I were doing the rewatch, and subsequently we did, and she has seen the entire series. And when we were doing the rewatch, there were some episodes where I was like, it looks like they filmed this yesterday. Like
Yeah.
the HD is so clean on it.
It's yeah, what they did as much as it looks good for TOS, the remaster on TNG is it's crystal clear. Like it looks
Yeah,
like it was filmed yesterday.
yeah,
With
it's
some of that
good.
stuff.
It's good.
That's
So, I mean, I could gush all day about TNG. What about you?
it's foundational. Like, yeah, it's you think
Hmm.
of Trek, you think of Star Trek, The Next Generation. That is it's as much as I have love for Kirk and Kirk being my like, yeah, at this point, yeah, Kirk is over Picard for me, just
Sure. No,
as
I
it
get
is.
it.
But as much as TOS is Star Trek, like, yeah, it is TNG. It's just
Hmm.
as much as I remember marathons of TOS. Yeah, it's marathons of TNG. Plenty of VHS tapes with TNG on. Like as you mentioned, it's the toys. I got a tub full of a bunch of TNG toys that I played with. So yeah, it holds a special place. It was my entry door for the most part. It's what I saw a lot of. I've seen probably more episodes, more times of TNG than TOS.
Oh
It
my
is it
God,
is
some of these episodes are like burned into our
oh
brains.
I quoting them like none other. Again, as my father and his sisters, they be quoting lines all the time. So it's yeah, it is burned in, and it's just I enjoy it. It is love. It's a warm blanket. Like I said, it just feels good. It's like, yes.
Oh, you
It's
could I mean, not every episode, but seriously, you could like I wish Paramount Plus did a thing where you could just be like hit a random Star Trek button, like random Star Trek episode button, and for the series or whatever, because God, I could catch something on like Tubi or wherever they're showing this, and if I just see a random TNG episode, if I'm flipping the channel or whatever, I'll usually just stop there and finish watching it because these episodes are like a warm blanket, like you
I don't know.
said.
The show still airs
Yeah,
6 nights a week.
yeah.
You know, on Heroes and Icons, if you get that channel, it's 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern, I believe. There's gonna be an episode of TNG.
Yeah.
Think like here we are 30 years later, and the show is still airing every night as a rerun. it's an incredible legacy, and
Yeah.
it's one that will be enhanced in a way a little later on as we get to some of the later stuff. But just for what it did here, like
We're
if
actually at past 35 years,
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
if what you just take seasons 1 through 7 of Star Trek: The
uh,
Next Generation, as if the movies never happened, as if what's late, like these 7 seasons by themselves are history, and
yeah.
it's incredible. All right, we're not going to wax all night out here. Before we get out of here, though, it's the final challenge. We got to
Oh
build. We
boy.
can now build a crew.
We
We got two
can.
crews to choose from, and so here's how this is going to work. At this point, our crews have been the TOS crew because that's all we've had. Once we move past it, we can't go back. So we have the
Oh,
chance
right.
now. We're gonna see who you pick from the TNG. We're gonna go through slot by slot real quick, and as it works, once we move on to DS9, TOS and TNG are no longer available. Who we have are locked in. That's how we're gonna do things.
Oh my
So
gosh.
starting off, here we go, Captain. Who are you
P-
going?
Picard.
Picard. Okay,
I'm doing
I,
Picard.
I got it. I'm going Kirk there. Kirk right now is my captain.
Okay.
First officer. And that's other quote. Wow, because positions are a little up in the air. You can put whoever you want wherever, but no repeating. So like while on the show, Spock was
Mm,
science and first officer. If you're gonna pick a role, you got to pick a role. So here we go. First officer.
Riker.
I'm with you. Yeah, Riker. Riker. Science.
Spock. Over Data. I'm saying Spock over Data, which is very hard for me.
Only because there's more slots. I'm gonna put Spock here too, because I know I can fit data in somewhere else.
Exactly.
Engineering. This is probably I'm not gonna lie, this is probably the hardest one.
I'm sticking with Scotty for now. I'm sorry, Jordy. I love you, but I'm sticking with the Miracle Worker for now.
This is a hard one.
I know.
But yeah, I gotta go Scotty. Scotty gonna make something happen with some duct tape and a piece of gum. Like this is
He's the Miracle Worker.
gonna make some things happen. Um let's keep it easy right now. Medical. Who's your CMO?
Damn it. Um. Uh. Crusher.
Oh, okay. I'm going bones. I'm going bones here.
Okay.
Okay. He went
Okay.
Crusher. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go Helmsman.
Well, TNG it kept rotating. Um. I will have to stick with Sulu.
Let's stick with Sulu here for now too.
Okay.
You could have put Crusher here. But yeah,
Wesley, sure, but it's Sulu. Come on.
Sulu, yeah. Um, Tactical.
Worf. That's easy for me.
Ooh,
Yeah.
here is where I'm going to put Data. I'm putting Data at Tactical.
Because you have tactical slash ops.
We ain't
Mm,
closed yet. You wanna?
no. God, if this is the only place I could put data. No, you know what? I'll lock it in. I'll lock it in at Worf
Okay,
for
okay,
tactical.
okay. Security. Do I have security on that list? I'm
You
sure.
do.
Okay. Here's why I'm putting Worf. Security.
Can I do a redo?
Open. Go ahead. It's
Okay,
open.
all right. Data for tactical slash ops, Worf for security.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I believe the last one is comms, which for me is a hoorah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
comp. And then I think we have a rando, right? Do we have a kind of utility?
Yes, we do. So
Okay.
comms, I'll definitely go with Uhura for that, for sure.
Okay. And utility. This is where it's going to get fun.
Utility, that's where I'll put Wesley Crusher. Because he was an acting ensign, and he could pretty much do it all, technically.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you right now for utility.
We'll see later when we get other seasons, but for right
Bring
now,
some other
that's where
people
I'm.
in. Yeah.
Because I don't want to, and I know we didn't touch upon it because this episode is huge, but growing up as a kid, I actually really liked Wesley.
Dude, tell more because we didn't like there are people who hate him as a character.
I know they do, and um, when I was growing up, to see a kid on the Ember. Now, this is totally different in terms of when I was growing up as a Power Rangers fan and seeing a kid become a Power Ranger. That's a different story. I was like, that little twerp, are you kidding me?
You were
But
older then, but even then, me as a kid, I didn't
yeah,
like it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
But
anyway.
but because I was younger and Wesley was older, it was like, wow, if a kid applied themselves, they could really achieve something. And I think for me that was a little bit of a role model. But, growing up and then, as an adult finding out how cool Will Wheaton is as just a human being.
He's
And
he's
now,
he's certainly championed the franchise like very
yeah.
few rarely do for any type of franchise,
And
and
to
the way he
have him
carries that way.
host things like, the Star Trek, After Trek or whatever, and um, for just Wesley to come back as a character at all more recently in the years, it means a lot. So I have to put Wesley in some slot in this, and I think Rando Utility is that for me.
Okay, so our crews are pretty aligned for the most part.
Yeah, yeah,
There's only one real difference. Okay. We'll see because it's gonna get interesting as we got more people. But bam, there we go. We've locked it in for
yes.
now. Let's go ahead and teleport out of here. Thank you for any time spending with us. This is Star Trek from 60,000 Light Years, a review of series by series as you see. This has been one about TNG. So final thoughts, sir.
TNG is awesome. I can't believe we're going to be hitting 40 years in like 3 years for this series. I feel old as shit. But I love TNG. It'll forever be one of my top favorites, if not the top.
TNG is not perfect,
No, not
but
by any
it's
means.
but it's pretty perfect. And I
It's
think
pretty
it's and it hits a weird spot because like certainly with some other shows, it's like missed opportunities with the premise.
hmm
TNG, while not perfect and while not being able to fully, I think, lean into some of the things they would like to do is because of the nature of the scene, as we see Deep Space Nine get to do a little better, it still did character advancement well.
hmm
We have through stories. And so while it is not
Yeah.
perfect, it's it's still knocks it out the park without question. And doing what it's able to do in the era that it's in, and literally as the foundation, a piece of TV foundation. Like it is, you
And
can't talk about TV without talking about TNG.
it really fills that Star Trek mission as a whole to explore strange new worlds and to go out there and
Yep.
and live long and prosper too. So yeah, it's great.
This is Star Trek from 60,000 Light Years. Thank you for spending some time with us. Like, share, subscribe, follow. We appreciate any time you've given to us. It really means a lot. We're just two fans doing this from the bottom of our hearts. Next up,
The
we going
movies.
deep. No, not movies yet. We're gonna say that for after. We're gonna say that because the way they Voyager and DS9 like we're gonna get to the series first. So we'll go through the
What?
series.
I thought we were doing TNG movies next.
We're going because you can't because part of it is you can't talk about some of the movies without talking about what happened in.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
third burst the
Okay.
bubble. Next up, we're gonna go to Tarak Noor,
Oh
aka
yeah.
what's known as Deep Space Nine. So please join us if you missed anything. Plenty of time to check out the previous episodes. Until next time, live long and prosper. Take care of yourselves. Be safe in this world, and continue to go boldly. My friend, it was a pleasure.
As always.